Good evening and welcome to Steve Matters with me, Steve Rape. It is the Retro Show, Wednesday night. I'm joined by George, Mitch, Stu, Steve and Steve as we look back at games between Newcastle United tonight, Oldham, Swindon and a second go at Blackpool, only because I couldn't find the Blackpool games that we'd already covered. And then when we went off air, Stu told us we've already done Blackpool. So I thought, well, we'll do a few Blackpool memories that maybe didn't get done the last time. So apologies for doing Blackpool twice. But yes, Oldham and Swindon, definitely new teams. We'll have all your usual favourites in as well. We'll have a few celebrity fans or so-called celebrity fans. We'll have the players who played for one of the teams and Newcastle. And obviously the lads will put together a 1 to 11 at the end of the show. But George, we'll come to you for your first recollection tonight.
Okay, Steve. And my first recollection is Oldham. It's in the 79-80 season, which quite an interesting season for us. And we beat Oldham 3-2. But our game, that game is all in terms of the season, is almost part of it, little part of it, because at the start of the season, which that game was, we were favourites to get promoted. And Bill McGarry was telling the press, Tyneside needs to get used to a new era. It's all going to change, and we're making it different. There's going to be lots of local influence, and he really was drumming it up. And until the new year, we were top of the league. And after we beat the Mackhams in New Year, we only won 2 more matches the rest of the season, and we ended up 9th, having been the favourites to get promoted. And of course, Bill McGarry got the push, didn't he? I think there's a programme there, Steve, for the match. It was one of the first pictures I think I sent you. That's it, with Peter With on the front. Interesting when you look at the season. I looked at the annual accounts, and there was 4 players on over £20,000. No, that's £20,000 a year, not a week, a year. and they were all paid more than the bloody manager was at that time. And we, our players didn't have the savvy to have a promotion clause in their contracts. What they did was they accepted the £50 a point bonus. With the Mackhams, they had a £5,000 bonus for promotion, £100 a point, and £25 for every goal over 2. And the net result was, guess what? Sunderland got promoted. We didn't win. We ended up at 9th. I'm not saying that had anything to do with it, but I'm not naive enough to think that it didn't either. Anyway, to go back to the match recollection, our team: Hardwick, Brownlee, Davies, Mick Martin, Barton, David Barton, John Bird, Alan Shoulder, Tommy Cassidy, Peter With, Terry Hibbert, and Jim Pearson. 19,099 at the game, which I was surprised at was when all the headlines were that we're favourites to get promotion. I would have thought it would be a full house to get the season off to a start. But of course, the season before we hadn't been particularly good either. Oldham didn't have any great, really great players in the side, but there one or two who ring a bell. Vic Callum, who ended up playing with our near neighbours. Jim Steele was quite a respectable player, but they gave us a good game. It was 3-2. First goal was scored by Oldham. Atkinson scored the first goal. Second goal was by Peter With. The third was Jim Steele, so we were 2-1 down. And then Alan Shoulder scored the fourth, the second and the third for us to put us 3-2 in the lead. And there's one of the penalties. I think that's the penalty he scored against the Mackhams. If you look at the strip,
it is. There's Kevin Arnott at the back.
That's right.
The left.
That's the one he scored. And then if you take the next one, Steve, he repeated. He that's what he did against Oldham, the first one. He was identical picture of a good penalty taker in my view, and Mick Martin, of course, in the picture as well. I don't know what other picture as I sent Steve.
You sent us one of a strip.
Well, that's the two strips who were wearing that particular season, the home strip and the away strip, which frankly I like the away strip. I thought that was quite a nice away strip. The season in terms of the league, as I say, it became a disaster, and we were lucky to end up 9th. But not just the league, we went out of all the cups as well. In one of the cups, particularly to a little-known club called Chester, who had a centre forward called Ian Rush, a young centre forward called Ian Rush, who just tore us to shreds, and that was us out of the FA Cup. And I think, if I'm not wrong, rather, I think that was your first match, was it, Neil?
It was indeed.
Yeah, and
thank you for blessing me with the curse. Yeah.
Another member of the Wallsend Academy was born. I think me and your granddad went together with the 3 away. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was a hell of a night, but it was good to witness the start of a blossoming career. But in fact, it wasn't just a blossoming career. He tore us to shreds and put us out the cup. So was there? I don't think there's any more pictures for that game. Was there, Steve?
No, you've just sent me the programs and stuff. I don't want to put them up. I think it's for the next game.
That's the next game, right? That's great. Well, that's my first recollection of matches against Newcastle and Oldham. As I say, I was staggered that it was only 19,000 and less than 100 at the match for the first game of the season. But I think that reflects on how poor we were the season before.
It reflects on that, and also reflects on the the employment situation and
yes.
social culture, I guess, George. I mean, things were quite tight, I guess, up there, going through a transitional period. Gary, I stand corrected, but I make no apologies for not knowing who Mackham is. If it was Rob Einmarsh, it's Rob Einmarsh, but it looked like Kevin Arnott, and that's one person who was a Newcastle fan who used to play in red and white, who I used to know. So I took a gamble. I was wrong. I stand corrected. Okay, Mitch, on to you for your first one.
Okay, my first one's 13th of March, 93. It's the promotion team under Keegan going down to Swindon. And Swindon's one of those places. It feels much further away than it is, because once you get off the motorway, it just feels like forever getting to the town, because you come off. It's one of two motorways. I think it's the M5 and the M1 maybe, and it's sort of halfway between the bloody two. So no matter which way you go, you've got this sort of trundle on country roads to get to Swindon, and it just feels like it takes forever. This game, we were now literally champions elect. We were running away with the league, and everybody was pretty much saying, "Yep, you're going to be crowned." But Swindon at that time were a team that woke up one day and decided we're going to play football the proper way. And they went through a series of managers, Hoddle, Macari, Ardiles, who had them playing with a bit of style. And actually, this Swindon team under Hoddle was a little bit of a thorn in our side. We struggled against them at home. I think we only drew against them at home. And we actually got beaten in this game when we went down to Swindon. And the one thing I would say is I think these two games from Swindon helped us in the Premier League, because Swindon were playing a high possession game, and we had to learn what to do when we weren't the team with the high level of possession under Keegan. And I think it stood in good stead the following year. This game's also notable as Andy Cole's debut. He was on the bench after he'd been signed from Bristol City, and the history writes itself thereafter. And so we were excited to see a glimpse of this lad that would just spend a relatively lot of money on, and someone who was deemed by many as an Arsenal reject. But unfortunately, as the game started, I mean, the first half was literally all Swindon. We couldn't get the ball off them. They played a very high defensive line, and they played a lot of possession, and they played quite well. and then totally against the run of play. 40 minutes, Clarkey went through and nearly opened the scoring. And then about a minute later, David Kelly managed to stick one in the back of the net the way David Kelly used to do. 1-0, and we're thinking, great, just before half-time, we're off and running. Here's another 3 points towards the title. Second half, though, Swindon had some very different ideas, and they came out again, high possession, high tempo, and within 5 minutes, we'd managed to give a penalty away, and Paul Bowden, who will probably come up later in the people who played for both teams, stuck the penalty away, and once they'd equalised, we went into our shells and started that thing where the defensive line got deeper and deeper. 4 minutes later, there was an equaliser. I think it was Calderwood. And that's all Andy Cole brought on. That's all Newcastle wake up a little bit. And he had a few chances, but he couldn't quite hit the spot. And Swindon managed to cruise through to the end of the game, really, in the last 20 minutes. It sort of petered out. But I think for all it was a loss, I think that side helped teach us a bit of a lesson about how to play against teams who want to keep possession, who want to play with a tempo. And that it wasn't always us just battering people. But as you find out in the next game, once we'd got it promoted, we became a different beast entirely. And that's the end of my first recollection.
Good stuff. Okay, Stu, on to you.
Well, I've picked 2 games from the same season, which is, I would say, probably my favourite season, which was the 93-94 season. The first up was Swindon. And just to follow on from what Mitch said, we did learn how to beat people and beat teams and beat them comfortably. This was a 7-1 battering, which was in the middle of March 1994. Swindon arrived at Newcastle. They were bottom of the league and they were going down. But just to give you a few facts, there were 6 points behind Manchester City, and we were about the same points behind Blackburn, who were second. And so it shows you how things change over a period of time. You know, football's not always the same. Blackburn had this Geordie fella up front for him, and he was tearing up the league. I mean, I can't remember his name. I don't know what happened to him. But we at the time had our own Geordie genius, and that was the name of Mr. Peter Beardsley, and he opened the scoring because Swindon had actually made a bright start. I think they come up to St James's with there's nothing to lose attitude, and they give it a go. So they had a few chances, but then Beardsley, he got a penalty. He created the penalty. He knocked the ball in the box and a bit of a 2-footed lunge at him. He was clever enough to dive over it, but the ref gave the penalty. Put it away in the corner very easily. The second goal come from Bobby Lee, who started making a habit of running deep from midfield and breaking the offside trap. And he lashed one in from just outside the box, you know, once he was clean through. Great goal. Well, that was it for the first half. But we knew, you know, it was comfortable, 2-0 up, the team were bottom of the league. And this time Newcastle couldn't mess it up. So it was just a case of when will the floodgates open? And it didn't happen until maybe 20 minutes into the second half. And then there was a flurry of goals for those who can remember. So I had to knock down because they were all after minutes. The second one was Robert Lee, where Andy Cole had a shot. And it was parried out, and Bobby Lee was in the right place at the right time to knock it into the net. So that was him with his second one. And then 3 minutes later, Pedro got his brace as well, when a shocking back pass, and it really was a shocking back pass. And Beardsley was onto it like a rat up a drain pipe. Shimmied past the keeper and just rolled into the empty net. And all of a sudden, we're 4-0 up. So you think, well, they're going to take the foot of the pedal. But no, 6 minutes later, Stevie Watson thrashed the ball at the net. He proper wellied it. And if you remember the game when he started doing that dance with his hands up and his legs up and everything else, that was that game. And then straight from the kickoff after he made it 5-0, Swindon scored from a free kick 25 yards out, and they took it quickly, and it was too quickly for Pav because the ball bounced over his arm. And there was a bit of complaining, but when you're 5-1 up now, you know, there's only about 10, 15 minutes left. You're not really going to bust a gut to get yourself sent off, you know, so you just accepted it. But 2 minutes after that, Andy Cole again had another shot saved, and Watto, you could probably say gleefully, whacked the rebound in, and off he went with his dance again. And then we had to wait a full 5 minutes for the last goal. the seventh one, and that was by where our two wingers combined, where Salty Sellers had put Rule Fox in, and he had a really good game that day as well, Rule Fox. He scored the seventh, and that was it. So there was no surprise that we scored 7 that season, because from what had happened from the promotion season under Keegan, it seemed to be a carry on, but it had more. It felt better because we were playing supposedly better teams, you know, and it was just the enthusiasm and the belief that they had, and obviously the ability. But they were ripping it apart. I think the only surprise that day is Newcastle scored 7 and Andy Cole didn't score any. And considering he scored 34 league goals that game, you know, you'd think straight away out of 7 he would have scored 2 or 3 of them, but no. So that was my first game. We've beaten Swindon 7-1.
Yeah, great stuff, and I remember that. Fantastic memories. Lots of comments coming in. Didn't Rob Lee score one of the greatest ever goals? No, that was against Brentford, Keith.
Brentford, aye.
Yeah.
Joe Allen was offside. I've just nicked this off Twitter as well. With it being a retro show, it's quite apt. 140th birthday today of Newcastle United, who were formed on this day in 1881 by young lads from Stanley Street and Byker as Stanley FC. Well worth having a pop onto Twitter and reading that kid's recollection and account. Paul Brown UK. He's written a really good article, which is linked onto that as a thread. So if you're on Twitter at Paul Brown UK, what I'll do as well is I'll get the link and I'll stick it in the chat so you can read his article. But a lot of controversy, of course, around the actual starting date, and that is certainly the reason why. So I think even George, I'll stick that in our Twitter chat anyway, so you can find it easily, because I know you'll be interested in reading that. Okay, Steve Wilkinson, good evening.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. I think I'm going to refer to the game that's just been mentioned in the comments by Kirk99, the game against Blackpool in 1987. It was a Littlewoods Cup match. Obviously, the Littlewoods Cup was the League Cup. It kept changing the names of the sponsors over the years, and this year it was the Littlewoods were sponsoring it. Which was the pools company, I think, wasn't it, in those days when they used to do the football pools, as opposed to the shop. We'd obviously had not a great success in cup matches from the 76, and we tend to go out in earlier rounds. And this one was actually the second round, and in those days they used to play it over 2 legs. The end of September, we played down at Broomfield Road and lost 1-0. I think that was a goal by Tony Cunningham, which was what Kirk mentioned. There was who played for Blackpool at the time. So we'd lost the first leg 1-0. Came back to St James's, a crowd of about 21,000, which wasn't bad for the time. Getting that sort of attendance in the ground, it's always amazing how teams get 6,000 or so for a League Cup match when they can get 20-odd thousand for a league game. No names mentioned, of course. But so there's 21,000 there, and I think we had quite a decent team. Willie McFall was manager at the time, and after taking over in 85 after Jack Charlton suddenly quit, and we're in the first division. And team of on that night was Martin Thomas in goal, Neil MacDonald, Brian Tinian, David McCreary, Peter Jackson, Glenn Roder at the back, Darren Jackson, Gaza, Paul Goddard, and Mirandina and John Cornwell. That was the team, and so the game started, and as I say, we started 1-0 down from the first leg, and within a couple of minutes we're actually 2 down, and so I thought, here we go again, typical Newcastle in the cup. It was a sort of speculative long shot, and it deceived Martin Thomas and went in. So we're 2-0 down after only a couple of minutes, and you're thinking that here we go. But fortunately, we got back straight into the game. We got a free kick. And it ended up with Gaza flicking it back into the penalty area. Peter Jackson, who was still up for the free kick from at the back, knocked it across the goal, and Paul Goddard bundled it into the net. So that was ones each on the night, still losing 2-1 in aggregate. But within about 10 minutes, we were back level again, and on aggregates. It was a long clearance from John Cornwell, and typical Mirandina goal, this one. He controlled it brilliantly, used his pace that was so often, burst into the penalty area, and a typical rifled bullet shot across the goal into the net. And that put us 2-1 ahead on the night, and level 2s each on aggregate. Continued to press, but we didn't get back in front until about the hour mark. and it was a goal that started from Darren Jackson bursting through the middle. He put it out to Paul Goddard, who knocked it across into the middle, but Darren Jackson continued to run on and knocked Paul Goddard's deflected ball into the net, and that put us ahead on the night. And then it really became the Gaza show, because he could have probably had a hat trick in the last quarter of 20 minutes. He had loads of shots. He hit the post. The keeper was saving them, and eventually Gallagher did get the ball in the net. About 10 minutes left. It was a ball from Brian Tinian, I think, who was left back, and he put it just into Gaza's path into the box, and he lifted it over the goalkeeper's head. So that was us safely through 4-1 on the night into the third round of the League Cup. And typically Newcastle, that was where it all ended, and we lost against Wimbledon. And strangely enough, we also lost against Wimbledon in the FA Cup in the fifth round once the new year started. But overall, it was quite a decent season, and I think we finished 8th, which I think if anybody said we would finish 8th this season, would snap their hand off. So that's my first game, Blackpool in 1987.
Great stuff, Steve. Steve Hasty, finishing off the recollections for game 1.
Yeah, I've picked another cup game, actually. I've picked the 4th round tie on the 30th of January 1988. Couple of reasons why I picked it. One was that, as you'll come to the result, the number of goals were scored. But secondly, there was a massive crush, if I remember rightly, outside the back of the ground for that particular game. We'd beaten Crystal Palace in the 3rd round, and it was like, once you got the 4th round on Tyneside, it was cup fever time. And there was a crowd of 28,000, which wasn't necessarily that big, but for some reason, I don't know what it was. I don't know if there was a delay in opening the turnstiles or what, but by 2 o'clock, Strawberry Place was just jam-packed, and you were squashed up against the wall. The idea of a queue to get in just seemed to disappear, and it just to be turning to every man for himself. And when we finally got in, I remember my mate, Tony, turning around and going, I think I've lost one of my trainers. We had one trainer on. Such was the crush, and he'd lost his trainer. So anyway, we get into the ground, and it was. I've written the team down. We've got Kelly in goal. We've got Anderson. We've got Kenny Wharton, Darren Jackson, and Peter Jackson, in Glenn Roeder, and then a midfield of Neil MacDonald, Paul Gascoigne. And up front, I think. Well, should I say up front? We've got Goddard, Mirandina, and Michael O'Neill, who we'd lashed out some money for in around about the October-November time. We'd lost Peter Beardsley, obviously to Liverpool, and it was a case of Mirandina coming in, if you remember. Spent, got a fortune for Peter, £2.5 million. I think we spent 575,000 on Mirandina. Anyway, the game kicks off, and we really were dominating the game, but we just weren't getting the breaks. And then on the half-hour mark, Neil MacDonald went down the wing, crossed the ball, and he pulled it right back to the edge of the 18-yard box, and Darren Jackson was flying in. And he caught this ball on the half volley and just rammed it past the keeper. And the goalkeeper was just standing there and just totally taken aback. So that was the first goal on the 34th minute. The second goal just before half time. Very, very similar move. Little sort of flick pass. Sends somebody free on the right-hand side. Ball gets cut back to Jackson in virtually the same position. This time he did a little shimmy and dropped his shoulder and pulled the ball onto the left-hand side. And then laid the ball beautifully into the path of Paul Gascoigne, who was perfectly positioned with his left foot. Being typical Gaza, however, he did also a little jinx. He dropped his shoulder, pulled the defender the other way, and passed it right into the top corner. Keeper scrambling across, making a dive, but there was no way he was going to get it. So half time, there we are, 2-0 up. Second half, again, I think it would be fair to say that Swindon were finished by this point anyway. But again, a lovely move down the right-hand side, cross from MacDonald, and it's met beautifully in the box, absolutely beautifully pinpoint. for Michael O'Neill, who's on 6 yards out, and Michael O'Neill buries this ball past the keeper. It was one of those where when you're 6 yards out and the ball comes to you and the defender's completely misread the cross, that it's only going in one place, and that was right in the back of the net. We then got a penalty, which Neil MacDonald missed. And then we got another penalty. This time Paul Goddard was brought down. Again, a lovely through ball. MacDonald making amends, I suppose, for the penalty miss. Sent Goddard through. Typical Sarge. He gets the ball. He's wrestling off the defender, who I think was Colin Calderwood, who eventually ended up at the Town in a coaching capacity. And basically the two of them were wrestling for about 5 or 6 yards. Down Goddard goes, penalty. But this time up steps a cocky little midfield number 8 in the shape of Paul Gascoigne, who decides to just show what a class player he was always going to be, and full of confidence. And he stroked the ball with his right foot into the bottom corner past a despairing keeper. I use that word because that's the kind of words that they use on TV commentaries this time round, isn't it? Despairing. A despairing goalkeeper. And then in the 87th minute, the icing was put on the cake when Mirandina got the ball. Typical Mirandina effort. He jinks past a couple of players, or he drops his shoulder, he moves around, does this little sort of swagger that he had, and he hammers the ball into the box. And he's already well inside the box anyway, and he puts the cross in. The cross gets cleared, and there's Goddard on the edge of the box just to stroke it straight back in. So there we are, 5-0. It's interesting when it was in situations like that in front of 28,600. The cup fever was very, very much. And Steve, you mentioned the game there. The fifth round tie was Wimbledon, and we were convinced we were going to Wembley. Absolutely convinced of it. But we got as far as the fifth round, and that's it. And of course, as we all know, Wimbledon went on and won the cup that year. But interestingly, when you look at the lineup, you look at the names of certain players. Nicky Hammond was in goal for them, and then up front they had a guy called Jimmy Quinn, who could certainly batter people when he wanted to. But the name that really stands out, other than Calderwood, as I say, who played for or was on the coaching staff at Newcastle, was a certain Chris Kamara. Those of you who are Sky Sports aficionados will remember him. He was a decent player. He went to Borough. He had a decent career about himself. But it's amazing when you look back and you think there he is, and you see him on the TV screens doing crazy commentaries in the league. But there he was on the pitch back in those days. So that was my game. First one, Steve. Swindon 5-0, and we're gonna go to Wembley whenever.
Brilliant stuff. Big shout out to our sponsors, as always, Spider VPN. For all your internet security, then Google the boys. They turn up at the top of your Google search list, and they can protect your photographs, your passwords, you name it. They can protect it using the VPN. Get yourself Spider VPN today. Also, skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thank you to you guys as well. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and to John at QTechShop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend and Newcastle. Thanks to John at Jab Signature, jabsignature.co.uk, for making all of our flyers. And if you are a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to post a question or just a comment and speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. Usually goes up within 24 hours. This Friday, time's running out for you to get your tickets. And even with Peter Beardsley, and that is at the Irish Centre this Friday, 7 o'clock. Doors open. You can buy your tickets for that event from newcastlelegends.com. Click shop. Also, Groupon and voucher tickets for the Beardsley event on the 30th of January which is at the Tyne Theatre. You can get them on Groupon or voucher. Makes a nice Christmas gift. 9th of December, food bank event at Bobix, formerly the Punch Bowl in Jesmond. Tickets for that event are at bobix.com. And if you want to make a donation to the food bank at any time, NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk, you can donate to the Matchday Bucket virtually. You can also buy your tickets, last chance to buy your tickets, for the raffle to win a pair of custom-made Peter Beardsley trainers from I Am The Renovation. Tickets for the raffle are £1. Don't forget as well, we do have our website, nufcmatters.com, and John's gone all festive with his Happy Christmas You Cult t-shirt with Santa holding his black and white scarf. So get yourself on there for your Christmas jumper if you haven't got one already. And he's also provided a new t-shirt for the food bank, which goes out on until Friday. It's pinned at the top of my Twitter at Steve Wraith. And it's got Newcastle 3, Brentford 3, a picture of the ground, the Q-Tip Hotel, and Mr. Toon Tickler on the front there. So there we go. That's a little tribute to our very own Toon Tipster, Joe Walker. I'm sure he'll probably be in the bidding for that one. But if you get to the top of my Twitter, at Steve Wraith, you'll be able to find that. Just bid underneath. The winning bid at 5 o'clock, because we will be going out early again this Friday due to the Beardsley event. Then get your bids in before 5 o'clock on Friday. So great t-shirt, and thanks again to John. And I think collectively we all managed to raise, between all Newcastle fans doing something over the weekend, 15 grand for the food bank. Still phenomenal, really good. And obviously the match donations by our new owners as well went a long way to increasing the amount of money that was raised. So brilliant effort by Newcastle fans indeed. As I said, the Three Amigos will be back, but it will be at the slightly earlier time of 3 o'clock. And I did see I would do that one, Steve and Neil. There we go, with Port and Jaws. That works out quite well. I quite like the windswept look.
Excellent.
You could stick Neil at the bottom of a garden looking like that.
I'll start practicing my USS Indianapolis monologue for the weekend. That'll be fantastic.
And I've just managed to secure a cracking podcast for the 6th of December. You know I like to do a little bit different on here, other than Newcastle. And a guy who I've looked after home on occasion, Andy McNabb, written many books, a lot of them being dramatised for TV. Andy McNabb will be joining me on the 6th of December on the show. Really looking forward to catching up with Andy and hearing some of his tales and seeing what new projects he's got coming up. And as I said, there's always something interesting with Andy and his life. So keep an eye out for that. Subscribe to the channel, and there's plenty more content to come. Okay, George, back to you for your second installment.
Well, before I do that, can I just say to the 3 years for Friday, make sure you've got a big enough boat, will you?
Yeah.
Can I pick up one or two of the chat lines that have been going through, which are interesting? When I talked about Bill McGarry saying the North East was changing, he's going to involve more people in the North East. One thing he did do, he brought a lot of North East kids into the squad. Like Carney was mentioned, a defender from Blythe Spartans. Now, he was a good addition because he could play anywhere across the back, and he was a good defender. And it was, I think it was Peter Cartwright he got from North Shields. He was scoring goals in the North Eastern League for Toffee, and he did very much the same when he came to us. So give McGarry's due. He did try to get one or two more locals involved in the team. It's just the pity that the team died away. The other thing about that season, of course, is in terms of Oldham, was the return match. There was Newcastle fans ran riot in Oldham, and there was hell on. It was a big inquiry. The club tried to blame the supporters club. When they did the analysis, there was only 3 buses that were the supporters club. All the rest were just random supporters, which is normal for us, I think. Anyway, but it was an odd season, to put it mildly. Right. Next game is Swindon in 1964, 29th of February 1964. It obviously was a leap year. It was Newcastle 4, Swindon 1, 23,565 in the ground. And it was an excellent game, even though we won fairly straightforwardly. It was a game of, as usual, of one or two stars, not just one star. Because in our forward line at this particular match, well, I'll read the team. It's Marshall, Craig, Dalton, Burton, McGrath, Jim Ailey, fantastic footballer, David Hilly, Ron McGarry, Cummins, the lad from Ashington, and Alan Suddick, Willie Penman and Alan Suddick, and that meant that you had Hilly and Suddick who just ran Swindon ragged. Hilly was fantastic ball player, excellent passer of a ball. If anything, a bit late, but he still used to get his footed when he needed to. And of course, that was bolstered by the fact you had Have Guns Will Travel playing up front and Ron McGarry, and he could frighten quite a few centre halves in his day. And Willie Penman was no slouch as well. So a good team and given Swindon a good game. In the Swindon side, there was a return home for Arthur Horsfield, who was playing for Swindon that afternoon. And actually, as in the previous match at Oldham, it was the visitors that scored first. It was a lad called Woodruff that scored the first goal. Then it was Dave Hilly. Ollie Burton got a rare goal. Suddick got a fantastic goal. Amazing dribble from the halfway line and just nonchalantly slotted it into the bottom corner. And Cummins, not a big centre forward, a lean centre forward, but a very hungry lad and very good in the air. And as was not unusual for him, he scored a brilliant header in this game to get the fourth goal. So all round a good game for Newcastle, but a one which, as I say, showed one or two people in our lineup the skills that they had. I think I've got the programme there in the pictures I sent you, Steve.
Is this for the Oldham game or the Swindon game?
The Swindon game. The one with the Oldham game is the away game, which I forgot to put up before. Yeah, that's the Swindon game. Yeah, at St James's, and then the other pictures, please, one after the other. And that's one of the goals going in. And I think that might no, this is one of a Swindon player, but who wasn't in that team. You may have heard me talk about somebody I used to play with in the juniors and the ends. Is Joe Butler. Joe Butler went to Swindon. Joe Butler was the smallest player in the junior squad. And unfortunately for him, he was around when Charlie Mitten became manager. So he was shipped off. Joe had other crosses to bear, though, because he was a St Aloysius schoolboy. And Ted Hughes, that ran all the teams, the youth teams and the ends, he was the headmaster of St Aloysius. So if ever Joe got picked in the team, you know what some of the other kids were saying? Well, he's only there because Ted Hughes is his headmaster. You know, that wasn't true. Joe was a brilliant footballer. And I think as he demonstrated, he went to Swindon for $5.5 grand, played nearly 400 matches for them. And he was a really good fullback, but a very demure lad in terms of physique. They tried to build him up at St James's Park, and you can't mention Swindon without talking about their League Cup final against Arsenal. And there's the programme from Wembley, and there's something old-fashioned programme, 2 shillings. I love that. Now that's Wembley. And the pitch is in that state because in their wisdom, the Wembley authorities that week decided to have the Horse of the Year show on the pitch. And oh yes, we can returf it ready for the final. Well, the only trouble was they hadn't banked on it raining like so-and-so for the whole week. So even though they returfed it, every time somebody put a foot in the wrong place, a divot was coming up. I mean, you can see the divots lying about there. And of course, it reduced it made, level things out. I mean, Arsenal was supposed to be going to walk this final, and yet Swindon really give them a thousand. It was 3-1. And number 11 in that picture is a player for Swindon called Don Rogers, a remarkable player, a player that nearly every big club in the country, that's him. And I like that one because I think he was one of the first mustachios players that was around at the time. I think every major club in the country wanted to buy him. In fact, one or two from overseas as well. He was an outstanding left winger. Pace, strength, heading, shooting. He was a remarkable player. It's the only way to describe him. But he didn't want to go anywhere. He was happy being a Swindon player and played his whole career from 15 right up to 30 odd as a Swindon player. And I think that speaks volumes for him. Ended up running 3 sports shops in Swindon, one that was a proper sports shop, one that made trophies, got sold trophies, and another one that did the 2. But a remarkable player, and it's a shame. Now, that's the Cup squad. Now, that Cup squad, Newcastle have an involvement in that, because if you look at it closely, there's Joe Butler in the squad, Peter Noble's in the squad at the back there, and Willie Penman's in the squad in the front row, second from the right. So the 3 Newcastle players played in that cup final and played a major part in that cup final. So it was a cup final worth remembering, and it just adds to my my memories about the game anyway. So that's my second recollection. Steve, about Blackpool, I'm happy to chip comments in about Blackpool.
Yeah, go on. We might as well. Okay, we've included them.
Well, I didn't do a game because when I looked at my notes, I had copious notes and pictures of Matthew's statues and all kinds that I'd sent in. So I thought, well, I'm not going to do all that again. But there's one bit about it, the Blackpool that I wanted to mention was that I was dragged to any match that involved Blackpool or Stoke by the Chicken Road Academy, my uncles and my father and my grandfather, to see them in case Stanley Matthews was playing, because that's who they wanted us to see him play. And very rarely did he turn up at St James's Park. Now, the theory in the Gallagher Corner in those days was that he didn't like St James's Park and he didn't come. Anyway, I did see him in one Blackpool match, and I think Bobby Mitchell really tore them apart, and I think we beat them 4-1, something like that. And Matthews came to the Gallagher Corner site to take a corner, and by then he'd bought himself a racehorse. And just before he was going to take the corner, my Uncle John went right to the front of the Gallagher end and shouted, "It's all right, Stan, your bloody horse has lost as well." So if that's the sort of barracking he used to get, I'm not surprised he didn't like coming to St James's Park. So that's a Blackpool memory for you as well.
Great stuff, George. Thanks for that. Doing your homework as always. Neil, on to you.
Hi. If you think of the coldest places on Earth, obviously you've got the South Pole and the North Pole, top of Everest, that would be in there, and Boundary Park. I have never been to a colder football ground than Boundary Park. I've been 3 times. The worst was when it was snowing. That was absolutely ridiculous. That was like Ice Station 0. On this particular night, it was a Monday night, 8th of November 1993. The result on the day was Oldham 1, Newcastle 3, but it should have been so much more. On the back of humping Wimbledon 4-out, we went up to Boundary Park. I think that night, were you at that game, Stu? I think you were.
Aye. Goal, wasn't it?
Did it not rain at half time, and it was like somebody shoving icicles in your face?
It wasn't rain. It was like really sharp rain, wasn't it? It was like
that was horrible. God, it was horrible. Anyway, we went there, and the thing about this night, and it's funny how we're talking about which games we're going to do, but we don't plan anything else but that. But we see synergies and things, and when we start talking about it, and Steve's talking about Sky Sports and Kamara. Well, this is the night Sky Sports dubbed us the entertainers. It was after this game and the little run of form we'd had leading to this game that phrase was used about us. But it didn't go all our own way. The first half, we literally battered Oldham. We did everything but score. And you had to hand it to their back four. Their back four were defended like lions. They really, really put a shift in. And then absolutely against the run of play on about 35 minutes, one of those lions actually got the first goal. A defender called Richard Jobson stabbed home after a free kick, and I think Hooper had made a bit of a mess of the cross, and it bounced around the box, and Jobson stuck it in. Jobson, for me, is probably one of the most underrated centre-backs of that era. I think he never got the recognition he deserved, and I think if you look at his record, I think he went on to be the PFA chairman, and he's still involved in that sort of side of the game and looking after players and retired players now. But I mean, he should have had England caps for me, and it's and I think significant. Again, you're talking about how football changes and talking about Man City being at the bottom of the Premiership. After they went down to the third division, who was the centre back they turned to get them out of the third into the second, and the second into the first? It was Richard Jobson. And he did a Kilcline, because once they got into the Premiership, he knew he wasn't going to play, and he wanted to keep playing, so he moved on. And I think that for me is the sign of a real professional footballer. And so he got the goal. We're going at half time wondering where the hell that had come from, because we really had battered them. And talk about response in the second half. We went from battering them to decimating them. One-way traffic. I think their keeper, and I think Jobson cleared 2 off the line. Their keeper made a couple of good saves. But the first goal came on 53 minutes. Andy Cole, and it's a goal you've probably all seen. This delicate little turn and chip from the edge of the 18-yard box back across himself and over the keeper. Such a beautiful finish, and a clever finish of a player in form. And that basically sealed it. The minute we got the equaliser, they had gone from all hands to the pump, so all hands and feet to the pump, and they were desperate to just keep Wood at bay. And it took until 73 minutes for the second. Beardsley, with a typical jinky mazy run into the box, and then shot across the keeper into the bottom corner. And then there was only going to be one result, and we capped it off on the 81st minute. Andy Cole again getting the ball in the centre of the area, turned between I think 3 defenders. And then squeezed the shot into the bottom corner. The way he just had this knack of whatever he touched seemed to find the back of the net. It really, on the night, it should have been 5 or 6 quite comfortably. And in that run of form, I think we battered another couple of teams along the way after that. But that was the night we were dubbed the entertainers, and with damn good reason. That was a hell of a game in not the best conditions. And like I say, bloody Boundary Park is an icicle in itself. And that's my second memories of Oldham and Swindon.
Good stuff. Okay, Stu.
My second one is also Oldham. Just talking about that game Mitch covered. If you remember, they had a advertising above the stand, didn't they? Painted on like seating paint or something. But the rest of the ground, all the paint was flaking off and everything. You know, you at least paint your ground if you're advertising. But anyway, the second one is the same season that would just beat Swindon 7-1 in 93-94. So this is Oldham at home about 6 weeks later. It was near the end of April. And all the pre-match talk had been about Robert Lee, who had been on a run of 6 goals in 8 games. And the game before the previous match, he just scored one of the 2 goals up when we won at Anfield 2-0. So he called up the England squad. There wasn't a game, it was like training, but he was like in probably the best form he played for us, I think, at that time. So we're now in a stadium that's grown, and you used the word synergy there, Mitch. The stadium was grown at such the same, like a rapid rate as the team was. You know, if you consider where we were 2 years ago when Keegan took over, you know, and at this stage they were building the Gallagher. You could still stand, but they were building behind her. And so that you start thinking that the meteoric rise in that 2 years, you just start, you know, we could have been in the old third division. And now we're in the Premier League, like sweeping teams aside. And this game was similar to the Swindon game, where the thoughts pre-match was just a case of like how many we're going to win by. Not are we going to win? Can we sneak this? We knew we were going to win, and we had the firm belief that we would. And Oldham didn't have Andy Bunn Frankie Bunn and Andy Ritchie, the 2 they had up front, the famous. They weren't playing, and they were also in the bottom 3, and they ended up getting relegated on the last day. So they joined Swindon to go down that season. But our first goal came from Rule Fox, and again, Andy Cole provided the assist when his shot was blocked, and Rule Fox knocked it in. We scored loads of goals like that with Cole, with shots from his rebounds, but also he would score a lot with rebounds as well. And we were a team full of confidence and self-belief. We're like riding the crest of a wave. It was like tsunami, like, wasn't it? Or I suppose tsunami might have been more uplish. I should have said that, but you know, that's the worst joke of the night, isn't it? Yeah. But it is true. Like, but even though they equalised,
we'll just wave it past, Stu.
Oh dear me! I'm not even going to come back with a retort for that one. No, I won't.
Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
I shall, host. I shall. Right. So even though they equalised just before half time, we still knew we'd outscored in the second half, because that's what Keegan's Newcastle was. You know, if they score one, we score two. They score two, we score three. So the belief was rewarded when Pedro he took away a great cross again from Cole. And I think them two, and all the years supporting Newcastle, I think those are my favourite forwards as a pair. You know, there was Quinn and McGee, there was Shearer Ferdinand, but I just loved the Cole and Beardsley. I thought they were just magnificent how they took the league by storm that season. Oldham equalised again through someone who must have been 3 days younger than God, and he was still playing for them. He was more famous playing for Everton, Graham Sharp. But he did took the goal away, and he had the same haircut, didn't he, for the whole 15 years that he played? It was just like the black mullet. He had the same haircut. Yeah. But normal service was resumed for us when man of the moment, Robbie Lee, he scored a goal very similar to the one I talked about in the first game, where again the through ball got played and he broke they're trying to play the offside trap, and he's sprung offside trap, clean through, edge of the box, swipes it into the top corner. And then Andy Cole nearly got a one to make it 4-2, but the keeper made a good save right at the end. So, as I touched on before, Cole scored 41 goals that season, 34 in the league. And I've covered a game at Newcastle, or 2 games, they've scored 10, and he didn't get one of them. But I did like him when he played for us. So, that's my 2 games done.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson, on to you, mate.
Right, well, my second game is a Swindon game in March '92. Game Newcastle won 3-1, and you just look at that score, you think it's okay, run of the mill, whatever. You look at the team that day, and I would say quite a decent team. Tommy Wright in goal, Steve Watson, Alan Thompson, Liam O'Brien, Brian Kilcline, Kevin Scott, Mickey Quinn, Gavin Peacock, David Kelly, Kevin Sheehan, Kevin Brock. Decent team. But you've got to look at the context of where that was in that season, because that was the season that's been mentioned a couple of times earlier on. I think Stu last mentioned it was where we almost went down to the 3rd division, because Keegan had only come in a few weeks earlier than this, and after Ozzy Ardiles had tried to play, Ozzy Ardiles was playing fantastic football with all youngsters. But I mentioned there 2 names in that team: Steve Watson, Alan Thompson. They were 18 and 19-year-old. And that's the problem when you try to play with young kids. And prior to that, you might recall we played other people like Lee Clark and others that were Alan Nielsen, that were all teenagers. And you just can't play that many when you're into a tough league like any league really, but the Championship is or what it was called League One in those days. It's very difficult to get out when you're playing younger kids against experienced players. So this game fitted into a time when we're still languishing in the bottom 6 or so of the league. Keegan had come in February after they decided to part with the services of Ozzy Ardiles, and I think it one of those things. I think nobody ever has a bad word to say about Ozzy, because he always tried to play good football, but we always saw that the team was just overrun, and I think he's one manager where it got sacked, and he still was in our hearts. You know, I don't think Steve Bruce will have the same affection when he comes back again as Ozzy Ardiles had. So anyway, the situation then was, of course, that Keegan had come in. He'd had his little walkout because the promised money didn't materialise, but that had got sorted out, and he brought in a name, as was mentioned earlier on, Killer Kilcline, who was the kind of player that we know we're going to need in January to bolster the defence and give us the survival that we're looking for. that was the situation then. That team started to look like a decent team, and this game they played it. Although there was always tension, a lot of these games there was tension, and this game was no different. We actually took the lead on about the half hour. David Kelly picked up a long clearance from defence, and as the keeper advanced he just scored at the penalty area and put it past the keeper. And you thought, well, we'll push on from this, but we didn't. But we just seemed to, not get control of the game, and we actually conceded an equaliser on about the hour from Swindon, and it was getting towards the end. You think, here we go again, we're gonna blow home points when it's important. But on the about quarter of an hour from the end, we got a corner. It was cleared towards the halfway line. It was put back forward again, and a fantastic control by Gavin Peacock on the edge of the box. He sort of took it down and flicked it in with the outside of his right foot, put us back in front. And then about 10 minutes later, he broke away again and put a square ball across to Mickey Quinn, who was coming in. The keeper parried it, and it went back to Quinn, who was slotted into the net. And so it was a vital win at that stage. It lifted us to 18th, which actually was the highest position we reached in that run into the end of the season, because as you might remember, we started to have a bad run again. We lost about 5 games in a row in April, and it was getting very sweaty towards the end until we had the last couple of games. Initially, the Portsmouth game when David Kelly scored that fantastic goal. I can always remember the atmosphere in that ground was just unbelievable that game, and then obviously Leicester on the last day. But that was a game against Swindon, which was part of a decent run, and I think at that stage, well, maybe if we can carry on this form, we're going to be all right. But it got tense again, and let's hope that's not what we experience when we're getting into January's, February's, and Marches next year. That's my second game.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, Steve Hasty, finishing off on the games with your second recollection.
Yeah, I've gone back to the 28th of November 1989. And a competition called the Zenith Data Cup. Right?
Now, there's a name to conjure with.
It is. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the Zenith Data Cup came
Didn't
by its name. It was basically the Full Members Cup, which was a cup that was brought in '85, a cup competition, because English teams had been banned from Europe after the trouble at Heysel, and we had no European competition, and they were looking for something that could fill the slot of missing European Cup games. It only ran for 7 years, and by 1988-89, it had been sponsored by a company called Simod. I don't know, I think with a car polish or something like that. Somebody, and then it became the Zenith Data Cup Systems in the start of the '89 season, and that lasted until 1992. Now, one of the reasons why I picked this game, well, there's a couple of reasons why I picked this game, but the first one is I want to run through the teams just to show you that it's only less than 18 months from the previous game that we had against Swindon, where we all thought we were going to win the cup. Now, we didn't really think we were going to win this cup, but the lineup was Burridge, Ranson, Stimson, Kevin Dillon, Bradshaw, Benny Christensen, Gallagher, Brock, Quinn, McGee, and Liam O'Brien. Basically nobody from 18 months ago. Manager was gone. The manager this time around was Jim Smith, and it just shows you how the club, when Newcastle United get into a state of flux, they really do get into a state of flux. And when a new manager comes in those days, a new manager would wipe the board clean and just get rid of everybody and bring his own people in, and that was basically typical Jim Smith.
Well, Smith was a proper wheeler dealer, wasn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. We thought Harry Redknapp was a wheeler dealer. This bloke didn't even need a car window to do it through. He was amazing as far as that was concerned. You look at their team, and there was some interesting names in this Oldham team. Dennis Irwin, who went on to play for Man United, obviously. Yeah. Earl Barrett. You remember Earl? He was a smashing left back. Willie Donaghy, come at the end of his career, but a Scottish international, great performer for Man City. They still had Andy Ritchie up front. His name's been mentioned a couple of times. I think you mentioned him at least once, Stu. They had another centre forward in Rick Holden. They also had Marshall. He wasn't playing in this game. Marshall was one of those players like centre half who, and I think somebody mentioned him on their centre half or centre forward, neither something or nothing, but every time he went up front, he seemed to be able to score goals. And I also had a player called Scott McGarvey. All names from that you remember from those days. Anyway, the game itself was an absolute nothing game. We scored after 4 minutes with Mickey Quinn, and then we had to wait. Well, some of us had to wait until the 88th minute for Mickey Quinn to get the winner. I say some of us because the attendance for this game was 6,167. So the chances are that not many people who were watching the show tonight will have actually been there or will have suffered from this. But that was our run, or start of our run in the Zenith Data Systems Cup. It was also a crazy competition because it was played in some sort of ridiculous. You didn't play in the first round, but you played in the second round. Then you had the third round. Then you went into the semi-final, but only with northern clubs. And if you got through,
it was North and South, wasn't it? Yeah.
You then had a proper semi-final, and then you had a final, and it was weird. We got knocked out by Borough in the northern area semi-final after beating Derby in the third round at St James's 3-2. But we got beat up Borough 1-0 in the northern area semi-final. So that was our run in the Zenith Data Cup systems. And if you were one of the 6,167 that were there, then you need a medal as big as a frying pan, quite frankly.
Classic, absolute classic. The Zenith Data Systems Cup, and somebody's just mentioned there, Kirk, the 6-6 versus Tranmere, a game which I was at. 3-3.
Wasn't that the first? Wasn't that the first game live on Sky Sports as well?
First televised live game on Sky Sports, yeah. Fantastic. I remember, and I was well served after being in the Mersey Clipper for 3 hours. Unbelievable memory. I was only a bairn as well, so I had a good sup. Some great memories as always, good recollections in the chat as well. As always, we find some celebrities who supported the various teams. And well, I think it's just a case of guessing the celebrities today, lads, instead of trying to suggest which club they supported, because some of these seem to support the same club. But who's that?
John, what's his face?
Stapleton.
There you go.
John Stapleton. We've got a collection of Swindon and Oldham fans here, and some actually reckon they support one or the other. But this one should
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox.
He's Oldham.
Oldham.
That's Mark. Something out to take that, innit?
Yeah.
Mark
Owen.
No, but I haven't a clue what her name is. I remember the programme she's been in. Comedy. BBC comedy. Yeah. Oh God. I could shout down ask Lauren, but she'll remember.
Sophie. Does Sophie ring a bell, Steve?
Yeah, and it's close, but it's not close, but no cigar. It's it's not Sophie, but Steve was right with the comedy.
Yeah.
She's a Swindon Town fan. It's Kerry Mucklow.
Yeah.
And another Swindon Town fan here.
Oh, that's Willie Carson.
Willie Carson. Correct. Okay, we're going to go into the players. I've just picked a mix of Oldham and Swindon players for this one.
Akuchi.
No.
Don't know that one.
Is it Baharrel?
Nope.
No.
See whether anybody in the chat gets that one.
Matt Appleby?
No.
Serrand.
No.
John Ryan? Is it John Ryan?
It's not. No. We'll come back to that. See if anybody in the chat gets that one. I'll give people a chance in the chat. Keith Rose saying, I thought Mark Owen was a Liverpool fan. This is the problem with these celebrities. I think they just say that they're fans when they go to these when they go to somewhere.
That's Neil MacDonald, isn't it?
Neil MacDonald.
Neil MacDonald.
Smashing player.
That's called
That's called
Sarant.
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 Yeah.
Agnew, is it?
Yeah, Steve
Steve
Agnew.
Steve Agnew.
Aye. What's he doing now? Colin Calderwood.
Colin Calderwood.
Colin Calderwood.
That
One
fits
size?
all.
Yeah, fits all.
Fits all.
Yeah.
David
Gary
Kelly.
Kelly.
Gary Kelly.
Kelly shaves his belly.
That's Joe.
Aye.
That's Joe Allen.
Yeah, Joe Allen.
Right, is it?
No, it's not Joe Allen.
Is it not? Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Joe will be happy with that.
Who's that?
Is that Mark Robinson?
It's not Mark Robinson.
Hmm.
It's quite an old shirt, isn't it? It's quite a while ago. No sponsor.
Neil
I don't know
Redfern.
that one.
Neil Redfern, aye.
Neil Redfern.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah. Grobbelaar.
Bruce Grobbelaar.
But he did play for us, didn't he? If one game.
Yeah, that's why I put that up. 3-0 against Liverpool.
Yeah.
Well done, Stuart.
Fantastic.
You got the link.
Yeah, cool hat trick on it. That's Robinson, isn't it?
That's Mark Robinson.
Aye, that's Robinson.
Killer.
Killer.
Yeah.
Brian Kilcline.
Is that Lewis Guy?
It's not.
Is it not?
Looks like, is it Cornwell?
The
It's
blonde
not.
hair. No.
Fair blonde hair. Ooh. No, is it not copy match, Richie? No.
Stuart Elliott by any chance?
No. I'm going to give it to the chat, and they've done well. Well done, Billy Trey. You were first in. And any
Eddie Howe.
Wow.
Well done. And Chippers, we'll give it to you as well. The three of you guessed that is our current manager, Eddie Howe. Well done, lads. Good spot.
Is that Tozer?
Ben Tozer.
No.
No.
No. No, I can't get that one.
Well, Applebee's, is it?
Yes. Good show. Well done.
Ah, Matty.
Oh, that's a
Matt
Barnsley top, isn't it?
Appleby.
It's a Barnsley top of Swindon.
Yeah, well done. Matty Appleby, Mark Byers got in there. Donald Baines got in there as well. Well done, lads. Okay, teams, George.
Well, I'm going to give you a Swindon team and then a mixed Oldham Swindon team. Is that all right?
Go
Right.
for it, mate. Yeah.
Swindon team: Shea Given, Joe Butler, Matt Ritchie, Peter Noble, Brian Kilcline, Stuart Elliott, Jacob Murphy, Willie Penman, Niall Ranger, and Niall Ranger, James Milner, and Ozzy Ordelis for all time's sake on the left wing. And then the mixed team, I've gone Gary Kelly in goal, Neil MacDonald. I've put Ben Tozer in at number 3, Matty Appleby 4, Glenn Keeley 5, Rob Lee 6, old-fashioned Tommy Walker at 7, Mickey Quinn at 9, and Arthur Horsfield at 10, and 11 is gone somewhere. Oh, Jimmy McCartney from the 1920s.
Great shout.
Can I say something about the Swindon fan page? They have every team with every player that played for Swindon and their club. There's 2 pages of Newcastle United back to the 1920s, as I just discovered, as I've used one of them. It's an amazingly well put together website. So anyway, that's my teams.
Great stuff. All right, on to you, Mitch, for your team selection.
I've done a Swindon team and an Oldham team. I'll start with my Swindon team. In goal, Shea Given. Back 4 of John Cornwell, Brian Kilcline, Ben Tozer and Paul Bowden. 2 in the midfield, Matt Ritchie and Mark Robinson. And then front line, a Niall Ranger, Willie Penman, David Mitchell, Peter Noble, and then managing that team is Ozzy Ardiles. The Oldham team, managed by Ian Dowie, is Gary Kelly in goal. Back 4 of Neil MacDonald, Brian Kilcline, David Baharrell and Carl Surrant. The midfield 3 that goes from the sublime to the ridiculous of Rob Lee, Matty Appleby and Darren McDonough. And then names to conjure with up front, Mickey Quinn, Chef Kikuchi and Calvin Zola Mukongo, who was one of the best signings ever on Championship Manager. If you get hold of him, he turned into a superstar. If I remember right, booted out of our academy because nobody could prove how old he was.
That's fantastic. That's a great effort. Well, you say doing these combined teams, it's even better. All right, Stu, over to you, mate.
Well, I've also done a Swindon team and an Oldham team as well, but I did get help. I had 10 Swindon players, and I refused to put Niall Ranger in the team because I didn't think he deserved it. So I got some help for 2 more. The Swindon team is Shea Given, Ben Tozer, Bowden and Cornwell at the back 4. Then I had Neil MacDonald, Ritchie and Mark Robinson in midfield. Because I took Niall Ranger out and I need to have these 2 up front, I had Peter Noble up front with a fantastic double act that you'll see on a Wednesday and a Saturday called Mitchell and Penman. So
there you go.
Put them together in the Swindon team. And most bars as well in Dubai. Right, so the Oldham team was Shavesy Belly in goal, John Ryan, David Beryl, Kilcline, Carl Surrant. Midfield 3, I think it's the same as Mitch's as well. Rob Lee, Redfern, who I put as player coach, Matty Appleby, and then up front we had Cookie McQuinn and Calvin Zola, because he didn't want his family name pronounced. He preferred to be called Calvin Zola. That was my team, and I had Ardiles as a manager for Swindon. But I was quite happy with the Mitchell and Penman forward line.
Oh, yes.
Okay, over to you, Steve Wilkinson.
Right, well, I've only got one combined team. Shea Given in goal. I put Peter Noble at fullback. I don't think he played fullback for us, but he did when he played for Burnley and I think Swindon as well. Neil MacDonald, Brian Kilcline, Carl Surrant, memorable for two particular reasons, and that was from the girl that jumped on his back when she was a striker, you might remember, in 1998. And I think it sort of finished his career just about, didn't it? Across the middle, Jacob Murphy, Rob Lee, Matt Ritchie, and up front, a couple from the past, Arthur Horsfield, Mickey Quinn, and Willie Penman. And I've got Eddie Howe as manager.
Okay, good stuff. And Steve, over to you, mate, for the final team.
Right, I've probably in goal. We do were around.
Steve, we've lost you there, mate. Your internet's just died a death, I think, at the end, mate. I've waited to see whether it corrected itself, but it hasn't, unfortunately. So we're going to have to leave that final recollection, Steve, for this week. Are you back? No, Steve. Still lost you there, mate. Okay, that brings an end to tonight's retro show. As always, some great memories from the lads, some good recollections, and it's got to be hard. You've got to do your homework on these shows, especially next week. It's not getting any easier. Northampton, Plymouth, and Rotherham. You can tell we're getting towards the end. Good luck, lads.
Thanks.
Good Lord.
Does that in Plymouth and Rotherham?
I've sent you in the chat so that you can see it. Yes, but fantastic, great stuff.
Wow.
As always, lads. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Okay.
Cheers, everyone.
Ta-ra, lad. Ta-ra.
Head back with the critics of time.